Welcome to the Great Lakes Fishing Podcast. Today, our guest is Josh Keeran from First in Fishing Charters. Josh, thanks for joining the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris.
Josh, we wanted to have you on to talk about coho fishing, specifically out of Racine. We talked coho fishing out of southern Lake Michigan, the Indiana shore, here a couple weeks ago. And when we were talking to Captain Fuzzy, he was telling us as those fish leave him, they come up towards you. Tell us about coho fishing in the Racine area.
Yeah, actually, that's funny. I just watched that. I've known Fuzzy for a while, and I watched him. I've actually watched all the podcasts. This is a great thing you guys are doing. Yeah, our coho fishing is a little bit different than how it starts in the southern end of the lake. Um, by the time they make it up to us, because they kind of follow the lake, the southern basin, and they come up the edge of the lake. They hit Chicago, Winthrop Harbor, Waukegan, and then come up by us. By the time they come up to by us, we're mostly using dodgers and flies, where the southern end of the lake, I know, especially earlier in the year, use a lot of thin fish and different, smaller spoons and stuff like that. So our technique for catching coho is a little bit different by the time they come to us. When the water is super cold and we don't have them in big batches yet, we'll use a lot of body baits and thin fish and spoons. But for the most part, once we get our cohos, then we're in full coho mode, and pretty much everything is a red dodger, peanut fly, mixing some flashers too. But so I say the biggest difference is when they're real heavy down there. A lot of times the guys are just using body baits and they're biting on that stuff. And when they're really heavy up by us, we're full on dodger and fly fishing for cohos.
What does that time period look like? At what point do those fish start to move from southern Lake Michigan up to you guys? What does the timing look like?
That's a really tough question to answer because it's all water temperature based for the most part. So last year, it took forever for the cohos to get up by us. And there were guys a lot of guys from northern Wisconsin come down and fish the Winthrop Harbor area, the state line, and I was going down and checking on them, and they were running all the way down to Chicago in May trying to get their cohos. I mean, that's a long run. This year, of course, fishing is different. The boats aren't in the water. We can't run charters right now, but they're at the state line pretty heavy. They're pretty good in Kenosha. Last week, I know guys were getting them out of the Racine Harbor, so it's a completely different year this year than it was last year. So the water's warming up more. They're coming up by us already, so I am, by May they should be pretty heavy by us, I would imagine. And then last year it was the end of May or June by the time.
What does that look like for you guys? You said you get into full blown coho mode. What does full blown coho mode look like for people who haven't experienced it?
Okay, so what I consider full blown coho mode, I'm fishing 4 to 5 boards aside, flatline boards, and it's a dodger, a red dodger, and a peanut fly on every one of them. I'm running 4 divers, smaller dipsies, or I would say the medium-sized divers, orange dodger and a peanut fly on those. My downrigger, same thing, orange dodger, peanut fly. I'm mixing some of the silver horde B&B flashers too, but for the most part, it's just an orange dodger and a peanut fly. And you'll see the boats that are really, when you see the charter boats and the guys that are really hardcore fishermen, and every rod is a orange dodger and it says orange. It's all orange. All you see on the back of it is orange.
What is it about orange in your area that makes it the color?
I really don't know. That's just a coho thing. The orange dodger and a peanut fly is a typical spring coho setup. Of course, the steelhead like it too here, but once we get later in the year, then we switch over to the bigger flashers and spin doctors and stuff, and then it transitions to the whites and the greens and stuff. But in the springtime, it's just orange dodgers and orange flashers.
When things are really going there for coho, what kind of days do you have? I mean, what does that box look like at the end of the day when things are really rolling?
Oh, I mean, we're getting as many people as you have on the boat, you're getting all your coho. I mean, we get 30 fish on our charters. It's not uncommon at all. It's just a matter of time. Some days it'll be uh, an hour, 2 hours. Some days it takes all 5 hours for the charter, but you can get your 20, 30 fish without a doubt most of the time.
What's it like out on the boat with you during this time? Um, what kind of experience is it for the charter clients?
I've worked on a lot of boats. I've been doing this since I was 12 years old, and I've seen all ends of the spectrum. I'd say for me, it's about as laid back as it could possibly be. I'm a pretty chill dude, and uh, it for me, I just love the experience of taking people out fishing. And of course, we want to catch fish, but if we hook up a fish and somebody loses it, it's just kind of like, hey, whatever, man. We'll just get another one. I'm not a yeller. I'm not a screamer. I want people to enjoy themselves, have fun, and whatever that takes, that's what we're gonna do.
I have a little bit of a confession to make. I grew up sort of in your area, and as a youngster, when my dad went charter fishing, he went out of the Racine Harbor, and Racine was always kind of a spot for me when it comes to Great Lakes fishing. That's sort of magical because I just remember that as a child. What is it about fishing in Racine, and what is it about that area that makes it special?
Well, I was born and raised in Racine. I live in Chicago now, so for me, my boat's always been Racine. Even though I live down here, I'm always going to keep my boat in Racine. That's same thing. When I was 12 years old, that's when I started fishing. I just jumped right on the charter boats, and so there's a lot of nostalgic stuff for me in Racine. Um, just where I always was. My family's there. I just have a natural love for Racine. And then the fishing aspect of it, uh, we have so much structure around Racine. We have so many places we can fish. When I leave the harbor, if I don't know where to go, sometimes it's hard because there's 5 or 8 different places that I could go and start it, and on almost any given day they could be productive. So networking helps a lot because then you know which way to go because you could be 8, 10 miles apart. But we just have so much opportunity for catching fish, and it's all year round. Whether it's Coho in the spring, or when the water warms up, we have our reef, Wind Point Lighthouse. We have the three hills about 5 miles off Racine, which just always tend to hold fish, whether it's the current or the water temperature. And then we have a great deep water program too. So, like all else fails, we can usually go out deep, or at least somewhat deep, and just head east and keep going deeper. And especially later in the summer when the water warms up, there's usually something out there. It's just a matter of finding them. But then just the all the other options. And then I've traveled all around the lake. Racine has a wonderful lakefront, a beautiful marina. The downtown's awesome. There's so much to offer in Racine as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, the thing that I remember, what was to offer in Racine is Larson's Bakery. Going to get a Kringle.
Oh man, you might start a fight with that one. It's either Larson's or O&H as far as the Kringle. There's not many people in between the middle. It's kind of like politics. You either like Larson's Kringle or you like O&H Kringle.
You said going out deep. What is deep? What is that like? What kind of water are you fishing when you go out deep?
So our hills, which Racine has kind of been famous for since I was a kid, started back in the lake trout fishing days when we'd fish the hills for them all the time. They're about 5 miles offshore, and I'm going to generalize here, but 70, 80 feet, and they go up and down for the three hills, and then at the backside of the last hill, you're 100, 120, and then it just keeps going deeper from there. So a lot of times, if you don't know where to go, the guys will just go out to 5 miles or so, start on the hills, and if it doesn't look good, nothing's there, then you just keep going east. And 300 feet is obtainable on a 5 hour charter. It's a little rough, but 250, we fish out there quite a bit in the summertime. So you're roughly 10 miles out.
Josh, you talked a little bit about the fact that there's no charters right now with the coronavirus thing going on. Tell us about kind of what you're doing right now to prepare to get ready to go fishing when you get that opportunity.
Well, it's kind of good and bad for me. Like obviously, I want to be running charters. I want to be fishing, and as a small business owner, it makes you sick to your stomach, especially not knowing when you're going to be able to start. But last fall, I bought a new boat, so uh, this spring it's kind of given me an opportunity to do some stuff to the boat and get it ready and clean it up and just do some other projects that I was kind of worried about having time constraints to do. So it's kind of bittersweet, I guess.
You've got another job. Tell us about, and you can kind of see it in the background, what you're up to, what your other job is, and what that's like.
Yeah, so I'm a full-time firefighter and paramedic with the city of Chicago. So, um, yeah, that's my career job. That's what gives me healthcare and all that good stuff. But I'm very fortunate in Chicago that we only work 88 days a year. Don't tell anybody that. So, when it's summertime, it affords me to be able to charter almost full time because of the time off I have. So, uh, yeah, I always tell people I have the two best jobs in the world. I get to fight fires and then I get to fish.
Not too many people have the two best jobs in the world, so
Yeah,
that's
okay.
pretty. Tell us about First In Fishing. Tell us about your charter, how people can reach you if they want to get out on the water with you.
So First in Fishing Charters, it's the website's racinefishing.com. You can go on there. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, all the regular places. Phone numbers on there too, 920-737-3350. So that's a good way to get a hold of me. Otherwise, just check out the Facebook, the Instagram, all the good stuff that social media has to offer us.
Awesome. Is there something that I didn't ask you about, Josh, that you wanted to talk about today?
Well, I kind of touched on the coho fishing a little bit, or what full blown coho fishing is. For me, it's a red dodger and a peanut fly. I think a lot of people, one mistake people do make with the coho fishing is they kind of get wrapped up in what's the right now as opposed to the big picture. So I'm not a big bait changer, and most of the time I'm going to have a red dodger, a red flasher, and one of our most famous flies or most productive is called the next generation fly. It's like a blue, green, and mirage fly. And I don't change it up very often. That's pretty much what I run. If something's not working, it's either speed, location, or direction, as far as I'm concerned for the most part. I try and figure out why the fish aren't biting before I figure out what bait isn't working. Um, and then it's very locational. When we're fishing close to shore or around structure, there's going to be a lot of times one spot that they're on. If you're out deeper water, then you can make the long trolls and you can find the pods that are spread out farther. But if you're in close or you're on structure, don't be afraid to turn around on them. And then I've had times where I've caught my 25, 30 fish in a quarter-mile stretch. But when you're out deep, you can just keep going and going and going sometimes and never get off of them. So just try and look at the bigger picture. Obviously, when you're out deep, the fish hawk is a huge advantage, especially when the fish are down deeper and you have the currents and the temperature. But in the springtime, I don't think the currents aren't usually as bad where the fish hawk is as huge of a player, especially in shallow. But you get out deep and sometimes we can have kings or we're fishing lake trout down below the cohos, and the speed can be completely different down below as it is up top. So just the big picture is what I like to tell people. Don't just focus on the right now. Try and figure out the entire aspect of what's going on.
Awesome, Josh. Really appreciate you spending some time with us today, sharing some of your knowledge. I'd like to have you on again sometime, maybe as you guys get back out on the water and do some fishing. It'd be fun to have you on again, talk some Racine fishing for later in the year.
Yeah, if you ever come back up that way, make sure you stop by and say hi, and maybe we'll go catch some cohos.
Definitely. Take care, stay safe out there, and we'll talk to you again.
All right, thanks, Chris.